Just yesterday, Bricks Minifigs released a blog post talking to their customers, to their community, to their franchisees about the ongoing lawsuit and about everything relating to the company. They probably did this because of the Reckless Ben video that just dropped, episode 3, with, at this point in time, over 5 million views on the video, really exposing Bricks Minifigs for how delinquent the company really is. Within this blog post, Bricks and Minifigs exposes themselves yet again. We're going to be going through this one line by line. Thank you guys for subscribing. Now, let's dive in.
So what I want to talk about first is probably the most minor thing, but it is something I just want to clarify a little bit because it might mislead a few people. In the blog post, there is a quote that says, "We appreciate the federal court's issuance of a preliminary injunction, which is focused on the protection of our franchisees and brand from a host of unlawful activities and reckless behavior." And I just want to say, it's really funny they said reckless behavior for Reckless Ben. Isn't that pretty funny? Anyway, getting further into this, the way Bricks Minifigs is presenting this preliminary injunction, it's making it sound like a victory for Bricks Minifigs, but that's not what the record shows here. Because when this preliminary injunction was signed on July 6th by federal judge David Barlow, the injunction states that nothing in it prevents Ben from discussing Bricks Minifigs, commenting on the litigation, publishing court filings, engaging in investigative journalism, or expressing opinions, criticism, satire, and commentary through any lawful means on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever other social media you can think of.
Yeah, so really what's going to happen within this document is they're going to try to color Reckless Ben as the villain inside of this in a way that kind of floats them up to the top, because in reality, what we know of what's going on with the court case is actually quite the opposite.
So I just had to mention that even though Bricks Minifigs is claiming this preliminary injunction is like a win for them in a way, like that's kind of the tone of what they're saying here, actually no, it is letting Ben talk freely about everything, which, you know, maybe if Bricks Minifigs had a change of heart and now they want Ben to be able to talk freely, yeah, maybe it is a win for them as well, but I really don't think that's something positive for Bricks Minifigs. Yep. I'm not sure why they're trying to maybe put a spin on it with that quote, because it just seems, I don't know, a bit off. I don't really think Bricks Minifigs is truthfully happy with the fact that Ben is no longer gagged. And that preliminary injunction literally allowed Ben to post part 3. So yeah, I highly doubt Bricks Minifigs is actually happy with that decision. So framing it as like a court protecting their brand from unlawful activities without mentioning that the same order freed Ben to keep posting is, at minimum, just incomplete. Like it's, I don't know, it's just a selective statement they're kind of making there. But moving further into the bigger bombshells of the blog post, the main body of this post announces 7 operational improvements that Bricks Minifigs is implementing. And on the surface, they sound pretty reasonable. I'm not gonna lie, a company just listening to what's happening and learning from their mistakes.
At the end of the day, they have to make these type of statements. Their PR team, their law team, who they're paying $800,000 per year from franchisees' payments, or dues, I should call them, they have to make some statements here to salvage their company. Content creators, Reckless Ben, and more are really getting the word out as to how poorly managed this franchise is and how people should be abandoning it because of this poor management. So they are in preserve mode, trying to make sure that their company doesn't completely go down.
Apparently. But here is the problem. Every single improvement that Bricks Minifigs is announcing corresponds directly to a systematic failure that critics have been documenting for months, that everyone has been calling out Bricks Minifigs for. And by announcing them as new improvements, Bricks Minifigs is indirectly confirming that those failures were real and kind of in their own way admitting they were wrong. So let's specifically go through the most important ones. The first improvement is field coaches. Bricks Minifigs announces that we recently hired experienced field coaches and a field coach manager. This increases store-level visibility with more consistent insight into store operations. So the key phrase here is increases store-level visibility, meaning that the store-level visibility was insufficient before. And it's very interesting how this ties back to Bricks and Minifigs' defense throughout this saga, which one of their main ones has been that they didn't know what was happening inside individual franchise stores, and that the Salem situation happened without corporate knowledge. And maybe if they had field coaches with consistent store level visibility at the time, they would have known about the consignment arrangement, possibly. But by announcing that they're now adding this oversight, that means Bricks and Minifigs is confirming it didn't meaningfully exist before. And I'm not trying.
Now, it is worth noting as well, something popped on the screen saying that it was eventually known by Bricks and Minifigs of what was going on in the stores.
Trying to accuse Bricks and Minifigs of anything by saying this, it's just kind of the logical implication of what they're saying, in my opinion. And moving on, we have franchisee qualifications as the second improvement. So Bricks and Minifigs announces, since 2023, we've improved how we qualify new franchise candidates, including background checks, higher financial requirements, and stronger internal expectations. But wait a second, they said since 2023? That's a very important detail because when you look at Crystal Law Gorman, Brandon Best, and Joshua Johnson, they were all qualified as Bricks and Minifigs franchisees before 2023. So Bricks and Minifigs is directly stating that their pre-2023 qualification process was inadequate compared to current standards.
And what's also kind of being said there is they're saying that their franchisees prior to 2023 may not have been the best. Maybe they chose people that were not ready or appropriate for a Bricks and Minifigs franchise, but it's also putting down and confirming the reasons why they potentially took back a few of these franchises. It looks like they're trying to further support their reason for taking back those 3 franchises that we spoke about previously.
And the franchise owners at the center of this entire controversy were products of that pre-2023 process. And something else they briefly mention, which I find really odd, is they say that they have increased their cost to become a franchisee, as if that's supposed to help the quality of franchisee or improve the qualifications. But really, since 2023, they have tripled what it costs to join as a franchisee. In 2023, the total cost of being a franchisee went from $99,000 to $225,000 to $241,000 to $570,000 in 2025, and in 2026, it is now $300,000 to almost $600,000 to become a franchisee. So they're presenting it as this qualification improvement that benefits franchisees, benefits Bricks and Minifigs as a whole, and they are kind of right. But it just benefits Bricks and Minifigs' revenue. What does having a bigger pocketbook prove? That doesn't make you more qualified. There are plenty of people with a lot of money that, trust me, would probably not align with like Lego brand values or make a good owner for a Bricks and Minifigs store. If Bricks and Minifigs is trying to make the claim here that being more wealthy makes you more qualified or more just or more reasonable or more moral, I think we all know that is not an argument that has much merit. So,
and it sounds to me like that's exactly what they're trying to say, that they're gating the entry to Bricks and Minifigs based off of someone's pocketbook.
Again, I'm not sure why Bricks and Minifigs mentioned that they increased the costs as if like that was supposed to help improve the quality of franchisees. Like really, that's 2 separate things to me. That's, there are some things that they did since 2023 that help their qualification process and bring in higher quality franchisees. And then there's this increasing the costs, which literally just gives Bricks and Minifigs more revenue. That doesn't do anything positive as far as the qualifications for new franchisees go.
More revenue that they can then put in their pockets and not use towards their franchisees or towards their brand.
But moving on, we have improvement number 3, the inventory system. So Bricks and Minifigs announces, we've invested significant resources into our recently required internal trade and inventory management system. We now require all franchisees to use this system. He says, we now require, meaning, of course, that this was previously not required. And because of Bricks and Minifigs' reluctance to release this, we haven't gotten all of the inventory documentation from Brian's case from the Salem, Oregon store. And Crystal says that she never received an inventory when Bricks and Minifigs took over her store, and literally in Reckless Ben's Part 3, like the whole plot of it was him trying to get the inventory from Bricks and Minifigs, and they would not give it to him. And this isn't an isolated feature in these Bricks and Minifigs cases. cases, the Clackamas County franchise owner said the same thing about inventory lists, about Bricks Minifigs not providing it. And Bricks Minifigs' own attorney apparently told Brian's attorney in writing that they had no legal obligation to provide an inventory. Anyway, fast forward to now, Bricks Minifigs is announcing they're implementing a standardized inventory system across all franchises. So the logical implication of this is that the inventory chaos at the center of Brian's case existed because there was no standardized system requiring consistent tracking. The fact is clear that a standardized inventory system would have helped a lot in this case because the inventory is probably the messiest part and the hardest part to confirm and prove in this case. But perhaps the biggest improvement is offboarding with third-party inventory evaluations. With this one, Bricks Minifigs says, we're refining a more standardized franchisee offboarding process, including third-party evaluations of inventory and fixtures where possible. So
this directly relates to everything going on with the Bricks and Minifigs case right now. Offboarding means taking over someone's store and making sure that a third party's eyes are on that type of an experience, as it says right here. Third party evaluations of inventory and fixtures where possible, it says though.
This means there will be third-party evaluations of inventory when stores change hands. And Crystal obviously never received a third-party inventory evaluation when Bricks Minifigs took over her store. They took over her store, said, we'll take everything on, all the consignment, everything like that, and then you need to get out right now. Like, that's basically what happened from all the camera footage that we have seen. And like I said just a minute ago, the Clackamas County franchise owner said a very similar thing, that assets were taken with no inventory provided and no location of the assets were ever disclosed to him. So again, this seems to be a reoccurring pattern that Bricks and Minifigs may be trying to improve now, but with that, with them actually saying they're improving this and adding this feature, it is also them kind of admitting that it was messed up. Like before this, there was no third-party evaluation, and Bricks and Minifigs themselves didn't even evaluate the inventory and give it to the previous franchise owners. So that means that every person who said that, you know, they took my store and never gave me an inventory, they were probably pretty accurately describing what happened, and we can probably trust that story. But improvement number 5 is really interesting to me. It is board expansion. So Bricks Minifigs announces that they are expanding their board of directors to include outside perspectives and a franchisee voice. So a company with, mind you, 223 plus franchise locations collecting $13.2 million a year in franchising fees currently has a board with no franchisee representation and apparently limited outside oversight.
They're really showing the cracks in the system, how for however long Bricks and Minifigs has been around, with all the locations, 223 locations that they have such a fractured infrastructure. No wonder that these problems are being had and that people can get away with things from within the upper portions of the company because there's no checks and balances.
So by adding these voices to the board now, in direct response to this crisis, Bricks and Minifigs is acknowledging that their structure overseeing all of these alleged incidents had no external checks on it. So basically, it could be as biased as they wanted to, and there was no one there to represent franchisees. That means there were no independent board members asking why stores were being transitioned without third-party inventory evaluations. There was no franchisee representative raising concerns about mandatory minimum payments being used to trigger asset seizure, and all these decisions happened in a structure without those voices. And now Bricks and Minifigs is only adding them after the consequences became public. But improvement number 6 is it's related to kind of PR and how Bricks and Minifigs has handled this whole thing publicly. They say, going forward, we're committed to leading with empathy and accountability first, then clarifying facts second. So this is kind of an admission that their communication throughout this crisis was backwards. They led with denials, deflections, and legal action. Ammon McNeff went on Fox News and made statements that were directly contradicted by documented evidence. They told Brian's attorney that the matter was closed and they had no legal obligation to return anything. They even banned Ben from asking for the inventory list in writing, calling it harassment. So leading with accountability first is definitely not what they did in this situation, and now they are acknowledging that. So here is what I'd like to call the central contradiction with this blog post. The big contradiction here. The problem is Bricks Minifigs writes things like, while much of the public discussion has been based on incomplete or inaccurate information, we also recognize simply correcting misinformation isn't enough. So they are calling the public criticism misinformation here, but in the same document, they announce that they're implementing all these different changes. So you cannot simultaneously call the criticism misinformation and announce that you're fixing everything that the criticism identified. So either the criticism was wrong, in which case, why are you fixing those exact things? Or the criticism identified real systematic failures, in which case, why are you calling it misinformation?
I think that Bricks and Minifigs has, throughout this entire case, has really stained their brand. I think most people from the outside looking in, like myself, like you, are looking at the franchise and saying how it's just, it's basically a sham and it's not something that you would have any trust in or that you would want to support, that you'd want to potentially buy from that. Now, you may have some, feel guilt or feel bad for the franchisees that are within this, so you may still purchase from these stores because they're the franchisee stores. It's not actually, corporate that owns the stores, but that corporate is the overlying demon that's basically in charge of what goes on and has the fate of those stores in their hands. Curious if everything that went on with Bricks and Minifigs, if you are a big Lego person, if this would keep you from actually going to a Bricks and Minifig store to make your purchases, even if it's a place that you'd used to go to in the past. I feel like a lot of people will be going in other directions, while some will still remain true because of the franchisees that are running those stores.
Bricks and Minifigs cannot have it both ways. And that is why in the thumbnail it says Ben was right, because Bricks and Minifigs' own announcements for these improvements make that case better than any critic could, than I could, than any of these other YouTubers could. But let's move on to the details of the lawsuit because Bricks Minifigs goes into that here. They say that they remain open to a mediated, amicable resolution. So here is what that actually looks like right now, according to public statements. Bricks Minifigs is seeking at least $1.3 million from Ben, with lawyers saying it could exceed $10 million per person. Ben's lawyers, I believe. And there are 16 defendants in this lawsuit. Do the math, 10 million times 16, that's $160 million at maximum here, which is insane. Also, Ben had to hire 5 attorneys in the last few weeks to cover all these different charges. So he has different attorneys that specialize in different things. And The case is now in federal court. Furthermore, Ben's attorneys have publicly stated he intends to file a counterclaim against Bricks and Minifigs, and his next criminal hearing is scheduled for September 15th, including charges like stalking, targeted residential picketing, disorderly conduct, and trespassing. I don't know. To me, that really doesn't sound like a mediated, amicable resolution. To me, all signs indicate that the lawsuit is not winding down. It is escalating in every way possible. So, in closing, in summary, Bricks and Minifigs published this blog post as a PR repair document in response to part 3. But read carefully, it accidentally became something else entirely because every improvement they announced confirmed that the systematic failures critics documented for months were real.
I think that this case is far from over. I don't think that Bricks and Minifigs is looking for anything amicable, and I think that Reckless Ben is pretty upset about things as well, as he should be. I think there's a lot more story to be had here that we're going to be seeing over the next few months. I do have a full playlist of the entire story over on my channel if you want to see what went down from day one, and of course, as always, I've linked the original video in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. Go check out the full playlist right here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.